He picked up a brush at 7, and by 13, his art was so lifelike, it was almost photographic. His father, an art teacher himself, saw his son's genius and handed him his own palette and brushes, vowing never to paint again. This boy was Pablo Picasso, and he wasn't just destined to become an artist. He was born to shatter the very definition of art itself. But the story you think you know, that's just the surface. What if I told you that behind the most famous artist of the 20th century lies a secreta, hidden masterpiece, a bitter rivalry, and a shocking act of artistic betrayal that shaped everything? Stay with me, because this story isn't just about painting. It's about a heist of the soul. The year is 1900. A young, ambitious Picasso arrives in Paris, the world's art capital. He's broke, he barely speaks French, but he's overflowing with talent. He soaks up the city, painting scenes of bustling cafes and melancholic street life. This is his blue period, hauntingly beautiful phase, where every canvas is drenched in shades of blue, reflecting his own poverty and the despair of the outcasts he painted. He was a struggling artist, burning his own drawings to stay warm in a freezing apartment. Critics were not impressed. They called his work morbid, depressing. But Picasso didn't care. He was painting his truth, his pain. This period gave us masterpieces like The Old Guitarist, a painting so sorrowful you can almost hear the lonely music. But this was just the beginning. As his mood lifted, so did his color palette, leading to his rose period. But even then, something was stirring within him, a dissatisfaction with painting what he saw. He wanted to paint what he felt, what he knew. This is where our story takes a sharp turn. Enter Henri Matisse. Today, they're both giants of modern art, but back then, they were fierce rivals. Matisse was the king of the Parisian art scene, celebrated for his bold, explosive use of color. Picasso was the young, rebellious challenger. They admired each other, but they also competed intensely. Their friends would pit them against one another, like two heavyweight boxers. If Matisse used a vibrant red, one friend recalled, Picasso would counter with a powerful blue. It was a battle of artistic titans, and Paris was their arena. The public, the critics, they were all watching. Who would be the true revolutionary? Who would define the future of art? Picasso knew he needed to do something radical, something that would not just challenge Matisse, but blow him out of the water. He found his weapon in the most unlikely of places. It was a trip to an ethnographic museum that changed everything. There, he saw African masks and sculptures. He was struck by their raw power, their geometric forms, their spiritual intensity. They weren't trying to be pretty or realistic. They were pure, direct emotion carved into wood. It was a revelation. Picasso saw a way to break free from the 500-year-old tradition of European painting. He realized you don't have to paint a face the way it looks. You can paint it from multiple angles at once, the side, the back, all in a single image, to capture the idea of the face, its complete essence. This was the key. He locked himself away in his studio for months, obsessively working on a single, massive canvas. He was on the verge of a breakthrough that would either make him a legend or a laugh. The result was Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, when he finally unveiled it to his closest friends. The reaction was pure shock, horror even. The painting depicted 5 figures with sharp, angular bodies and faces that looked like fragmented African masks. It was aggressive, raw, and completely unprecedented. His friend and patron, Leo Stein, called it a horrible mess. Even Matisse was furious, believing Picasso was mocking the entire modern art movement. They thought he had gone mad. The painting was so scandalous, so utterly alien, that Picasso rolled it up and hid it in his studio for years. He had gambled everything on this one painting and, it seemed, he had lost. The world wasn't ready. He was too far ahead of his time. This single, rejected painting could have been the end of his career. But this is Picasso. Rejection was just fuel. He and his friend, Georges Braque, took the revolutionary ideas from Les Demoiselles and refined them. They began deconstructing objects: a guitar, a bottle, a violin, and reassembling them on the canvas from multiple viewpoints. They stripped away color, focusing almost entirely on form and structure. They were like scientists dissecting reality itself. This new style was dubbed Cubism by a critic who mockingly described their work as being full of little cubes. The name stuck, and it launched the most influential art movement of the 20th century. Picasso had not only recovered from his failure, he had turned it into his greatest triumph. He had broken the rules of perspective that had governed art since the Renaissance. He had taught the world a new way to see. Now, let's go back to that rivalry with Matisse. While Picasso was inventing Cubism, Matisse continued to be the master of color and fluid lines. For decades, they were the two poles of modern art, constantly watching, challenging, and pushing each other. It was the most productive rivalry in art history. But what if there was more to it? We've reached the part of the story that's rarely told. In the late 1940s, both artists were old men, living in the south of France. Matisse, frail and confined to a wheelchair, began creating his famous cutouts. Huge, vibrant compositions made from pieces of painted paper. They were joyful, simple, and utterly brilliant. He called it painting with scissors. The art world was captivated once again, and Picasso. He watched, he visited Matisse, saw these incredible works, and according to some accounts, he was consumed by a familiar feeling: jealousy. He saw Matisse, in his final years, creating something pure and new, something that Picasso, with all his frantic energy, couldn't replicate. It was a form of art that seemed to come from a place of peace, a quality Picasso rarely possessed. And here is where the story takes its final, shocking twist. After Matisse died in 1954, Picasso did something extraordinary. He began a series of paintings, a deep, obsessive exploration of another artist's work. But it wasn't Matisse's. It was Delacroix's Women of Algiers. Why, on the surface, it was a tribute to a past master. But look closer. The style, the vibrant colors, the sensual, decorative patterns. It was a direct conversation with Matisse. It was as if Picasso was trying to absorb Matisse's spirit, to take his rival's greatest strengths, his mastery of color and arabesque lines, and make them his own. He was, in a way, trying to paint the masterpieces Matisse never got to paint. It was the ultimate act of artistic homage, but also the ultimate act of rivalry, an attempt to have the last word, even after his competitor was gone. He was continuing their dialogue beyond the grave. The secret wasn't a hidden painting, it was a hidden motive. Picasso's late work wasn't just about his own genius. It was about his lifelong obsession with his greatest rival. He broke every rule in art, but the one thing he could never break free from was the shadow of Henri Matisse. The greatest revolutionary in modern art spent his final years trying to conquer the ghost of his only true equal. His entire career was a relentless quest for reinvention, but it was also a story of a deep, complicated, and unspoken artistic love affair. So the next time you see a Picasso, don't just see the fractured faces or the bold lines. See the ambition of a young boy who took his father's brushes. See the starving artist burning his work to stay warm. See the revolutionary who dared to show the world a new reality. and see the old master haunted and inspired by the one artist he could never quite defeat. Still fighting, still creating, until the very end. That's the real story of Pablo Picasso. Not just an artist who broke the rules, but a man who was driven by a powerful, lifelong obsession. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden histories of art. See you in the next one.